But most countries now seem to be pursuing what's called a multi-vector foreign policy, which you seek to diversify your foreign policies because and connect with all the major powers. Because once you marry one side, you lose your influence with both with all the other poles of power. So, for example, look at Saudi Arabia or Turkey or I could say in India, but let's go with the big ones. The medium-sized countries. As long as they have many partners, they can't really be pressured anymore by one center of power. And it's this economic diversification which is seen to augment their foreign policy or their sovereignty and the foreign policy autonomy. So I think you can see this in many countries, and this is why often the bloc mentality we have in the West, we don't always appreciate it, because we're looking at the Saudis or the Turks and we're saying, well, why are they leaning towards China? Are they going to leave the West? Why are they leaning towards Russia? Are they going to join a Russian bloc? But the whole point is these countries do not want to be a part of any blocs, any exclusive arrangement, because once they're part of a bloc, they will become excessively dependent on one center of power, and they will begin to be cut off from other centers of power. And suddenly they will become a mere piece in the bigger geopolitical game. And this is what they're seeking to avoid. So you see this now with especially then with Turkey. I think they're the one pushing the hardest. Now, the entire world is moving in this direction because this is under multipolar system. Almost all the medium-sized countries can have more political independence and act as a separate pole of power. The only one who doesn't, it appears, is the Europeans, because in Europe, they're doing exactly the opposite. As we see unipolarity replaced with multipolarity, the strategic interest is, of course, to diversify, to connect with China, the United States, Russia, the whole world, and then you have the ability to have favorable negotiations to have a more prosperous economy. You can have more political independence, but instead the Europeans are doing the opposite. They're cutting themselves off the Russian energy. Now the Americans are telling them to cut off the Chinese technologies, and whoever country, the United States doesn't want the Europeans to trade with anymore. So the Europeans are now becoming much less competitive. Their prosperity is falling apart. Obviously, you see this with the Germans. And so Europe is getting poorer, but also without any other partners, we become excessively dependent on the United States. And this is problematic because Europe and the United States are not equal actors. When you're that dependent on another state and you have asymmetrical interdependence, that means the Europeans are much more reliant on the US than the US are on the Europeans. The US can convert this asymmetrical economic interdependence into political influence. So now, for so many years, the Europeans were talking about European sovereignty, strategic autonomy. Although these days are gone now. Now, if the United States says something, the Europeans will follow. This is why, Macron for years was warning Europe shouldn't be vassals of America. Well, this has an economic condition to it. If you want not to be a vassal, you have to diversify your economic connectivity. And again, they've done the opposite. So now you see Europe becoming more and more dependent on the United States. And as the United States, the big irony is the United States is reducing in relevance, but the more limited resources now has, it will focus towards Asia, because this is where the main action is. So it will look more towards China, India, these other countries. So it's wants to leave Europe with a few resources or declining resources it has and go more towards Asia. So it will demand more military and economic loyalty from the Europeans. It will have less to deliver. And the impulse of the Europeans is to effectively double down on their obedience to the United States and hope that doing whatever they want with NATO, for example, will increase the value of NATO to the Americans, and they will start to prioritize Europe again. It's a very foolish policy, but it's one that we're not really allowed to contest, because everything is we tend to dumb down all debates to being simply about good and evil, democracy versus authoritarianism, and here if Americans are democratic, the Chinese are authoritarian. How could we possibly diversify? We have to be, put all our eggs in one basket. So it's very strange